endless parade of distractions and political posturing and phony scandals. The phony debates and nonsense.
The phony scandals that have consumed so much attention here.
Phony scandals, fake scandals, or things like that.
Phony and fake. Well, conservative groups targeted by the IRS saying it's very real. So does the IRS Inspector General and House Speaker John Boehner, who told us, quote, "It's clear now the president never took this IRS scandal as seriously as he claimed. The House will continue its investigation into this matter because Americans deserve to know the truth." So who's right? Hi, everybody. I'm David Asman. Welcome to Forbes on Fox. Let's go in focus with Steve Forbes, Rick Unger, John Tamny, Elizabeth McDonald, Rich Karlgaard, and Sabrina Schaeffer. EMAC, is the president right?
No, he's wrong. You know, just a few months ago, I don't get it. He did say at that time he had no patience with what was going on at the IRS. He found it outrageous. The IRS must be held accountable. But now he's saying essentially, you know, he's rewriting history is what he's doing. Listen, IRS workers are saying that a task force in Washington, D.C. basically oversaw this political targeting. Even the new head of the IRS is saying we need more investigation. What they're trying to do is silence the opposition who don't like health reform, who didn't like the way the country is being run.
And Rick, usually when you hear politicians screaming that same line, it's phony, it's fake, it's phony, it's fake, usually that means that we've hit on something, no?
Well, only when it's Democrats. But, you know,
Republicans or Democrats?
Yeah, look, here's the reality. The president is not suddenly saying that the IRS targeting of conservative groups didn't happen. As Liz said, he did acknowledge it. He continues to acknowledge it. What he's talking about is this effort to draw this direct line to the White House, most recently exhibited by the Daily Caller when they pretended that the IRS attorney went to a meeting, which he did, at the White House 2 days before. But let's put up a picture.
Hold on a second. What was the pretense? He was there. We have a picture.
Exactly. Take a look at that picture. You'll see him with 13 other agency people, not Internal Revenue Service agency people, at a meeting with the president. They come from all different agencies. This is the place where allegedly
But the fact is, this guy, William Wilkins, is an appointee, a political appointee, is the IRS chief counsel. He took the Tea Party cases away from those workers in Cincinnati after they concluded that they should receive nonprofit tax. You're going, no, but that's the truth.
Look at the furthermore,
testimony.
National Review.
We don't have the testimony yet, Steve Forbes, because no, we don't, because he has not yet appeared, Steve, before the Congressional Committee. And that's why the Tea Party folks who were targeted, like somebody who, let's just play a tape of her. She is the president of the Wetumpka Tea Party, responding to whether or not this is a phony scandal or not. Play the tape.
I think the only phony thing going on is the narrative that the White House is trying to push off onto the American people.
There are 200 organizations like the one she represents who want answers. Don't they deserve the answers?
Sure they do, David. And the fact of the matter is they're dragging this thing out, being very slow in releasing documents and the like. And the president saying this is fake is like Richard Nixon saying the Watergate burglary is a third-rate burglary. And the fact of the matter is the president did right out in the open in 2010, numerous times calling for investigations by the IRS. A dozen Democrat senators did the same thing. So they didn't need to do it in secret meetings. They did it right out in the open. They wanted persecution, and they got it.
And, John Tamny, I'll tell you what is phony and what is dishonest is the attempt on the part of the administration and a lot of their media bootlickers to try to paint this thing as being on both left and the right. That is, that progressives were targeted as well as Tea Party people. The Inspector General himself had to finally come out and say, and I'm quoting him now, "We did not find evidence that the criteria you identified labeled progressives were used by the IRS to select potential political cases during the 2010-2012 timeframe." So the Inspector General himself saying this was not across the board liberals and conservatives. It was just conservatives they were targeting.
Oh, President Obama's hubris is staggering. Wouldn't he love for us to forget this and move on? But the reality is that an obnoxious, unaccountable federal agency blunted the anti-Obama ground game, but potentially blunted the anti-President Obama ground game that could have changed the electoral result in 2012. He has to remember that there's a lot of emotion logically tied up in every election, this one no different from the others, and this scandal's not going away. People do want answers.
And, Rich, the fact is that we saw the power of the Tea Party in the 2010 elections. The president and the Democratic operatives did not want them to have the same kind of power in 2012.
Well, absolutely, because when the House is in Republican hands, it really thwarts Obama's agenda and his reach for his legacy and history. Look, you can't escape the fact that former IRS Chief Doug Shulman visited the White House 157 times. But do I think this scandal is really going to get legs a la Watergate? No. Because we have the most politicized attorney general probably in history, or at least since Nixon's John Mitchell, in Eric Holder. And Eric Holder will probably fall on a sword before this goes anywhere.
But, Sabrina, we do have a congressional committee that is intent on following this lead wherever it goes.
I think we do, but I think Rich is right. I mean, Eric Holder talked about distractions. Now he's focused on Texas when we should be talking about what happened to the IRS. I think this president is really up in the clouds. At best, he is, truly disconnected from the American people. And at worst, he's grossly dishonest. If you look at the polls, Gallup, Rasmussen, others, nearly 60% of the American people think this is real. They think it's serious, and they think it originated and starts and ends in Washington.
Rick, I know you don't think the evidence is there, and maybe it's not yet for the connection. Hold on a second. For the connection between William Wilkins, the president appointee, and these Tea Party groups, although he took the cases away from the Cincinnati folks. Don't you want to know why he did that and whether or not he was influenced at all by the White House?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that you're saying there was no testimony yet because he hasn't spoken, but you're saying he took it away. Let me tell you.
Wait, hold on a second.
Yeah.
I'm saying that he hasn't appeared before Congress yet. He will. They're going to subpoena him to come and speak. He may plead the fifth like Lois Lerner did. I don't know.
Where are you getting the information that he, Wilkins, took these cases away?
From the Cincinnati caseworkers.
Right.
That's what they said.
Which is what I was trying to get to.
Under testimony, under oath.
Let's go to that.
If they lied, they're going to be prosecuted.
Yeah, let's go to that testimony as it was reported and then corrected by no more of a conservative magazine than the National Review, who pointed out that the way that testimony was reported, again by the Daily Caller, was not the testimony that was
anybody can read.
Rick, that's totally wrong.
That's not true.
No,
anybody
got it right here.
that testimony.
No,
so did we. So did we. Go ahead.
And whatever was said,
EMAC, go ahead.
Rick, the way you're describing that article is totally wrong. What the National Review is saying is we don't know. I want to know what Mr. Wilkie did. I want to know what Doug Shulman did. Wilkins did.
Can I read it?
Hang on a second. I want to know what Doug Shulman did because these are the guys who were in the White House. I want to know about the wink, wink, and the nods in the hallway. So what, they had a meeting. We don't know what went on in the hallway. The final point, Janet Reno called for a special prosecutor for Whitewater. Nixon allowed a special prosecutor, Elliot Richardson did, for Watergate. So why doesn't the president allow a special prosecutor?
Okay, bottom line is, Steve, there's a lot of information we need to get to. Don't we need that to come out in open testimony, particularly testimony of somebody like Mr. Wilkins?
Absolutely, and that's why Lizzie's right. We do need a special prosecutor to get to the bottom of this. The Justice Department's not going to do it. Congress is going to have the taint because it's, quote, partisan, at least in the House. And so we need somebody in a real team to get to the bottom of this. And the fact of the matter is there's too much. 200 organizations get targeted. That just doesn't happen from a few rogue agents. This was directed. And I want to know, David, those 12 Democratic senators wrote letters. Where did they go when they went to the IRS? Who handled those, and how did they respond?
A lot more questions and answers. Hopefully, Congress will get at those answers. Coming up next.
If the law is implemented as it currently stands, when we hire somebody new, we'll let that person know they're part-time and they won't be eligible for the health insurance benefit.
White Castle taking on the White House. The president insisting his health care law isn't creating a part-time workforce. You just heard what the burger chain had to say. Whose argument are you buying? We'll debate that coming next. Well, brand new signs the health care law may be flatlining jobs and costing taxpayers more money. The AP is reporting the White House spending nearly $700 million to promote the law. And White Castle now warning it may only hire part-timers due to the law's mandates. And, Steve, you say this is more proof the law is bad for jobs.
Absolutely, David. That 50-employee threshold is going to play out more and more. Imagine you have a business growing, and now you're going to hold it back because of increased costs from the government. And in terms of the 30-hour work week, more and more, they now want to raise it to 40 hours to try to get people to have full-time jobs. But this is a job killer. Pure and simple. And those who say, well, you may get tax credits and good things like that, these are small businesses that have small margins, and this is absolutely going to be crushing and is crushing them.
Rick, a jobs killer or not?
Now, interestingly enough, there's a study that came out just this week, which I brought with me. Notice how I came loaded with everything today?
I came loaded for bear here.
Study out by the CEPR that says that 0.6%.
By whom, by the way?
CEPR.
Okay, it's a progressive group.
Italy's progressive, it does. But it says that 0.6%. Well, guys, you can't just discount.
You got to get
data.
your face out of my hand.
Get your face out of my hand?
Get your hand out of my face.
0.6% of the workforce is working less than 30 hours, and that's exactly what the number was last year, so statistically even. Yep. More interestingly, 2/3 of those who are in that group said that they are working less hours because they want to. 1/3 says they're working less hours because their employer is telling them to.
Well, Sabrina, you've looked into these details as well. What have you found?
Yeah, well, I'm skeptical that people are working fewer hours right now because they want to in this economy. Look, the fact is, I think people are beginning to realize that our economic health is at stake with this law, not just our physical health. And there's a real problem, and I know we've talked about it here before, but it's this minimum essential coverage requirement that Obamacare says that all employers with 50 or more employees have to provide this Cadillac version of insurance. But the reality is, every business is not going to be able to absorb that cost. So while McDonald's might be able to, White Castle might not. They're pushing surcharges onto their customers. They're lowering the number of people that they employ. This is definitely a jobs killer, as Steve says.
Morgan, you've also been looking into this. What have you found?
I actually looked at the same study as Rick, and I'm going to dive into that a little further as well. I don't necessarily believe this is a jobs killer. I think a lot of it also depends on the business. We're talking about small businesses with smaller margins here. And actually, if you look at that, of the 28 million small businesses, less than 4% are actually within the 40 to 50 staff mark that are actually going to be implicated by the Obamacare regulations. You break that down further, and 9 out of 10 of those companies already offer some sort of insurance program. So I'm a little skeptical. I don't think this is going to kill jobs. This could potentially change the type of jobs that we see offer. I don't see this killing jobs.
Mike, White Castle already has come out and saying, not for the people who are already working there, but they're not cutting current employees, but new hires, they are more reluctant to hire people full-time because of health care law.
David, the majority of job growth over the last 10 years have come from small businesses. The reason why President Obama is going to be the first president to be there during a recovery where incomes have fallen, the labor participation rate has fallen, is because he is pushing this health care mandate onto people who don't want it, which is why he's even extended the mandate, because it doesn't work. It's raising costs, and when costs go up, businesses hire less.
And, John, when you have an unemployment that is as stubbornly high as ours is, particularly, by the way, we should mention minority youth who are facing a 40% unemployment rate right now, and this is the targeted group. This is the group that's hurt the most by this health care law, right?
Oh, come on. I mean, this is not even debatable. Of course it's a job killer. Labor is a cost. Businesses hire workers because they feel they can get more than that cost back. Obamacare, by definition, even Rick would agree, is going to raise the cost of hiring. Because of that, job creation will go down.
Rick would
Throw all your statistics out. This is basic economics.
Steve, is it basic economics?
It is basic economics, and the tax credits and things like that. David, again, where does the money come from? This is a cost of labor. It's a huge amount of uncertainty, and that's why we've had a jobless recovery relatively, because small businesses aren't doing it. And big companies have the cash, but small businesses don't, and that's the huge difference.
Well, Rick, let me just hold on a second. Let me just ask Rick, why do you think it is that White Castle is now saying they're going to be more reluctant to hire people full-time? They say it's because of the health care law. Are they lying?
For the same reason that Darden Industries did exactly the same thing, as we all recall last year. And what ended up happening? When their customers told them how they felt about that behavior, they immediately backed off and stopped doing it.
White Castle rarely has no choice.
Papa John's, and so will White Castle.
By the way, Sabrina, I got to bring a personal element in here. My daughter works at a retailer, Abercrombie & Fitch. They're also beginning to hire on the part-time basis. Just about everybody works there is part-time now, particularly because of the benefits issue.
Yeah, well, and actually, I have to agree with Morgan here that there is there are some groups that may benefit from that. Younger workers who maybe want part-time jobs, women who often want part-time jobs, they could benefit from this. But on balance, I think that this is a disaster for job creation. And just think about how the alternative could, what the alternative picture could have looked like if we had actually done something to drive insurance away from employer-provided. It could have been a magically different picture.
And also done something about the lawsuits, all those malpractice suits, which the president didn't want to touch. Okay, Detroit moving forward with